You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Chris in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, TV shows, games, books, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 646, our final hype show for Maul Shadow Lord. We are 5 days away from the premiere of 2 episodes that we're going to talk about, as well as everything else that you need to know to get hyped up for this. But honestly, with me, of course, is Chris. Chris, I got a question. I mean, I don't know who's not hyped for this series at this point. It seems to be a series that everyone is going in with very, very high expectations and a positive attitude, which is something that has been sorely missed, I think, in Star Wars fandom here for quite some time.
Yeah, if you're not hyped for this show already, then I have to question your fandom. But no, I give props to Lucasfilm for the marketing they've done so far to get us hyped for this TV show. They've given us crumbs when we asked for it. They've given us the big meal when we've asked for it, and they're continuing to drop little vignettes here and there that just get us that much more excited for the debut of this series, and I can't wait. I've been excited since it's been about a year now since the footage debuted at Celebration Japan. So I've been waiting for this for a while. So I'm stoked that we're just a few days away from being able to watch the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree. And we'll talk about all that here. We're going to break down everything from what episodes you can expect. We'll get into a breakdown of the characters, the writers, some of the technical stuff that's going on, and we'll get into some predictions and some fun questions at the very end. So before we do all of that, I want to say, first off, thank you for everybody who joins us tonight on the live recording. We appreciate you guys being here. There's a number of folks already in the chat right now. Justin Huber, Mudhorn Station, One Up versus CPU, My Star Wars Guys, and a ton of other people that haven't said hello. Don't need to, but if you want, feel free to chime in there. We'll give you a shout out. Also want to say thank you to our Patreon members who fund this show and keep it on the air. We've got a new member. BA from BA is the newest member. They've joined the We Are All the Republic tier. And I want to say a shout out to our now part of the tribe members. So that's Alex, Danny, Dante, Daz, I've got a Brad feeling, Jackson, Jacob, Josh, Mike Borda, Paisley, Rita Reborn, Sharkman Dan, Uncle Leon, and Will I Am. And then we have our Delusions of Grandeur members, which are top tiers. That's Now This Is Rod Racing, Steve, and Rob. Thank you guys so much. If you're interested in Patreon, you can go to cantinacast.com/Patreon. You can sign up there for as little as $2. We've got all kinds of exclusive episodes that are just for Patreon members. I'll talk about the one we've got coming up here this weekend because we're both excited about that. And if you tomorrow, or I shouldn't say tomorrow, well, let's segue into that. This Sunday, that Patreon show is going to be Balance of the Force. So it's a topic that we've talked about from time to time. I don't know that we've ever dedicated an entire show to it. The closest we got is we did a Patreon show with some Patreon members. We kind of got into that discussion, and it turned into a pretty meaty discussion. And it was something that's always been in the back catalog of, hey, we really need to spend some time with this and just let it sit and breathe. So that'll be Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central here for Patreon members. We'll get into the Balance of the Force, talk about what it means maybe to us individually, things that you've heard about it from fandom. We'll get into the George Lucas explanation, as well as some of the other folks who've worked with Star Wars and content creators and actors and writers, that sort of thing, and really kind of break it down and figure out what it truly means to be have balance in the Force. So that'll be Sunday night. And then this Tuesday, Maul will premiere that Monday night or Tuesday a.m., depending on your time zone. That's all, I guess, Tuesday a.m. But we'll break down the first 2 episodes on Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Central here on YouTube. That'll be a public show. We've got a work cut out for us because that gives us a very small window to really put the show notes together and then, do our personal lives as well. So anyway, so thank you guys so much, all the Patreon members. Thank you anybody who supports the show. We certainly appreciate it a lot. We hope you can tune in. Before we go any further, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment in this down below as well. Ring the bell so you don't miss any of the live episodes that we do for our recordings. Okay, with that out of the way, Let's get into talking about this little show called Maul Shadow Lord. So I know you've given them some impressions. This is the final episode that we'll do before we're not going to talk about Maul again until we actually get to the series. But
Mhm.
you kind of started down this path. Just general interest right now. What are some of the things that you're really looking forward to? Whether it's the art design, the writing, the acting, the people that are coming back. Like, what is really what's really motivating you to watch this show and want to see it?
So it's a couple of things. I can start with my first impression of ever seeing any footage of this show. Again, back in last April in Japan at Star Wars Celebration Japan, just how beautiful the animation is. Again, we've said this many times on other shows that have focused on Maul Shadow Lord, how much more fluid the characters are moving, how the lightsabers move, how it's not like, normal lightsaber fights in like Clone Wars and Rebels. It's like, slash and hack and pause, something like that. It's very fluid, like it was actually people up there. The
Yeah.
fact that they're using matte paintings as background against that beautiful animation and how good it looks. That's one of the things that I'm excited for, as well as the story, because we know that between the end of Clone Wars, then he shows up in Rebels, and then we kind of have like a gap between the end of Rebels, and then we see him again in Solo, and then of course after Solo we see him. No, we see him in Rebels, but I got my timeline mixed up. It's Clone Wars, Solo, then Rebels, where ultimately he meets his demise. Um, that gap there is like, how did he become the head of Crimson Dawn, the largest, crime society in the Star Wars galaxy? That is kind of like what I want to see. Uh, from what it sounds like, the title and a lot of the information that we've been given, and a lot of the scenes and from the trailers and vignettes and whatnot, is that he's trying to make a name for himself, and he has no loyalty to anyone, only himself. And so, really, the space that he fits now, with the Empire ruling everything, there's no Jedi Order, there's really nothing else, is in the crime world. And
Hmm.
so now I kind of want to see, how does he come from the last time we see him in Rebels to the crime boss that we see him in or as in Solo.
Yeah.
So those are the two big things that piques my interest. Obviously, there's other parts of the story. We have Devin, the Twi'lek Jedi. How is she going to play? Is she going to end up being Darth Talon? Stuff like that. But those 2 points that I mentioned previously, those are what really have me enthralled to watch this show.
Yeah, I mean it's Star Wars first and foremost, right? So I'm excited just to see Star Wars on the small screen again. Number one, the people that are the creative folks behind this series have done some of the best Star Wars in my opinion. Like some of my most favorite pieces and stories from Star Wars come from this crew, right? Whether it's the cast, whether it's the technical people, the writers, directors, the producers. It's so this is all going to feel very familiar to me. I suspect that's going to be the case. I also am looking forward to filling in some of the holes that we have in
Mhm.
Maul's storyline. He's such an intriguing character. I called him the cockroach of Star Wars. We've called him that for a number of years here on the show. But he is somebody who, given his short demise and quick exit at the end of Phantom Menace, it's amazing and still astounding to see that we were able to have a character that's so multi-layered in this sense. And when we get into talking about the character of Maul here in just a little bit, there was an article that came out here recently in Star Wars Insider with Sam Witwer talking about the character, and he really provides some really good insight into what we can expect from Maul. I know a lot of people are labeling him as kind of being, maybe not one dimensional, but just not having a lot of a runway to grow as a character. And yet, when you read into what Sam Witwer is saying, there's actually some development here. Now he may regress in all that, right? But
Mhm.
it looks like we are going to have some more character development, given more dimensions to his character in this series and some of the situations that he's placed in, and some of the experiences that have impacted him that are making him this kind of a new character, a new version of Maul. So all of that is incredibly intriguing for me.
Mhm.
As far as the art design, the art in the animation, I'd agree. Like, I hope this is the bar, right? I hope everything that supersedes this is as of this same quality. I love some of the older techniques, like you said, the matte painting too. We've talked about that on some of the shows. That's super exciting. But I mean, just in general, like, if there's any one thing that's drawing me to this show, I have to say it's Sam Witwer because of his
Mhm.
portrayal as Darth Maul. I mean, he's done it so many times and he does it so well. And when you got somebody who's that vested in a character, I have really high expectations. My hype is pretty high right now for this
Right.
series, and a lot of it is being driven just in hearing him speak about how much work they've done as a team in the last 2 years, and him name dropping all these people, like I said earlier, that I'm just I think are my heroes when it comes to telling Star Wars stories. I
Mhm.
think we're being set up here for a really good show. I mean, fingers crossed. I hope it doesn't bomb or anything like that, but I just can't see it failing given the quality of the talent that's been collected here to put the series out.
So, Sam Witwer was at MegaCon Orlando a couple weekends ago, and he did a panel. And in that panel, he said that the creators of this show and himself took great care with this character, knowing uh, that, like you mentioned, he may seem a little bit one dimensional, and they wanted to try to expand on that because in reality, the way they see him is not like that. So he did mention that we're going to get to see sides of Maul from an emotional level that we haven't seen before in any type of media, whether it's Solo or obviously the majority of his visual media appearances have been in, Clone Wars and Rebels. But we haven't really seen an emotional range from him. It's always manipulation, anger, whatnot. But in this series, we're going to see more emotional range from the character Maul, and hopefully that will expand his character, allow his character to grow, because there's a lot to unpack there. We just haven't had an opportunity to do it, and I think this show is going to at least be the beginning of us being able to unpack the layers of Darth Maul or
Yeah,
Maul.
or Maul as he's known today. Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
The other thing I just want to quickly mention too is we're going to get into the origin really quickly about how this all kind of came to be. But one thing that was really neat that came out recently in some of the interviews was that you don't necessarily need to know a lot about Maul. You don't need to know about how things transpired during the Clone Wars. You don't need to know where he ended up with being freed and from the by Crimson Dawn, or not Crimson, Crimson Dawn. You don't need to know a lot of that stuff because they're going to introduce a lot of that at the beginning. So they're going to give him a proper introduction. I don't know how to take that. Like in some aspects, I wonder if it is going to be flashback, and so we're going to get scenes spliced
Hmm.
together. Maybe somebody's recalling his tale, or maybe it's him talking to someone. But it feels like they are going to do that, and I think it's actually a good thing because I mean, people that are listening to this podcast or here tonight or watching the YouTube channel, whatever, we all are pretty familiar with what happened with Maul. But the general public does not know. They may have heard inklings that he came back at some point. Spider Maul was kind of a big deal. It made
Hmm.
kind of main media press there at the time. But beyond that, a lot of the other stuff that's happened since then has not really surfaced. And so their last memory of Darth Maul was him being cut in half, presumably dead. And suddenly here he is popping up. The same kind of thing happened when we got Solo. I don't know that enough people really were scratching their head. I think that a lot of folks maybe just didn't understand the timeline or whatever else. But
Hmm.
the same thing happened then. We had a lot of folks going like, "Wait a minute, isn't that the guy that died? That
Got
devil guy
sliced
that
in
died?
half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sliced in half." And so they didn't really do a whole lot to explain at the time. But if you're going to do a series of 10 episodes, right, it feels like this. Yes, you have to have some kind of a formal reintroduction of the character. I'm excited to see what that looks like. I hope they get creative. I hope it's not just a flashback or something really tropey like that. But
Right.
I do hope that they do get a little creative in how they reintroduce his character and get everybody up to speed on where he is, because I think that is going to be important for a series like this.
Another thing that Sam Witwer mentioned in his panel at MegaCon was that you again, like you said, the way that this show is going to be presented, you don't really have to like watch a lot of Clone Wars or Rebels episodes or go back and watch Phantom Menace. That you should be able to jump into this show without having the backstory. And one of the reasons for that is they just wanted to create a show where it made sense to a casual fan that may not have watched the Clone Wars or Rebels. But
Hmm.
another thing that they said is that it's so action packed that you don't have an opportunity to stop and think, hey, where did that come from, or how did he end up here? Because it's going to be so action packed. So
pacing, yeah,
the pacing is going to be so quick. So I think because obviously we all know now that if we want these Star Wars projects to stay afloat, the hardcore fans watching it, they're going to do it regardless. And that's not enough to keep these projects afloat. We need the casual fan. We need the television fan. We need the movie fan to come out in droves to support these projects so that we can get more of them. So I think they kind of took that in mind. And again, one of the things they said is that you should be able to jump into the series not having much knowledge of the character and still be able to follow and not have to, ask questions about, how did this happen? How did that happen?
Yeah.
That the way that they're setting up the show is that you won't need that. So I'm looking forward to see how they do that. Cause like we mentioned previously, there's a lot of layers to Maul. Maul has a lot of history. Not everyone knows that history. And in the past, his history is played into the particular storyline, whether it's Clone Wars or Rebels. So I'm curious to see what they come up with to make what they said happen, where you don't need that backstory. So I'm excited and curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's good, right? Because it makes it more accessible to just everyone, right? You don't have to feel like you're part of some secret club that knows every
gatekeeping information and everything.
Gatekeeping or a Wikipedia historian to understand what's going on in the show. That's actually a really good thing. So, all right, so let's get into kind of so what we do here on the Final Hype Show is we're going to get into a quick breakdown of how this thing came to be. We'll get into the tail of the tape, talking about the number of episodes and any technical information that we know of, which seems kind of a little short compared to what we've had for other series. We'll talk about the cast and crew and who's playing what, get into some of the character descriptions, and then we'll end on talking about some of the series questions that we have as well as predictions. So for anyone that doesn't know, this series, there's a couple number of executive producers on here. We've got Athena Portillo, who's, again, I mean, this is like an all-star list of Star Wars producers and creators, honestly. But we got Athena Portillo, Carrie Beck, Dave Filoni, Matt Miknovitz, Brad Rao, and Josh Rhimes are all executive producers.
The usual suspects for Lucasfilm Animation. Yeah,
right. Scum and villainy right there.
Right.
And I mean that in the most flattering way in terms. And then we've got someone named Alex Spotswood, who's the co-executive producer. The writers on this are Dave Filoni and Matt Miknovitz. So that's already in good hands, in my opinion. Of course, these are characters that were inspired by George Lucas, including Darth Maul and all the characters that they worked on during the Phantom Menace and some of the ones that carried over into the Clone Wars, et cetera. We'll get into all those here in a second. This series, I think it started about 2 years ago from what some more recent interviews that Sam Witwer has been doing, that this has been in works for about 2 years at least. So that puts it, right around the time that we were still in the midst of the Bad Batch and that kind of wrapping that up. So this felt like it was, they had already started the ball rolling on this one. But this really came about as a result, the storyline that we've got here, this backstory of Maul and where he was between, after the Phantom Menace until maybe Rebels. The story that we're going to see was something that came up originally between Dave Filoni and George Lucas during when they were making the Clone Wars and some of the Rebels stuff, right? So they were kind of talking, pitching ideas. Filoni was a part of that. Witwer was a part of that. They were kind of saying, coming up with backstory and that sort of thing. And it kind of eventually molded into this, some of the story that we're about to see here. So I should also mention, like earlier, we do get a vision of a small portion of Maul in Solo: A Star Wars Story. At that point, he's kind of at the peak. He's now in charge of all the major 5 crime syndicates that exist in the galaxy. So this is just before that for anybody that's not sure of where the timeline is. This particular series was first announced at Star Wars Celebration in Japan. So that would have been April 2025. So they'd already been in production for about a year, maybe not some level of production within about a year. The official synopsis for the series said, after the events of the Clone Wars, Maul plots to rebuild his criminal syndicate on a planet untouched by the Empire, that planet being Jarix. Is it Jarix or Janix now? Janix. Janix, yeah. There he crosses paths with a disillusioned young Jedi Padawan who could be the apprentice he is seeking that will aid him in his relentless pursuit for revenge. That kind of changed a couple of times, which is the case usually by the time we get to a week before the synopsis is kind of finalized, and it doesn't really change at that point. It is interesting that they're highlighting the apprentice portion of it more. When you look at the vignettes and you look at the TV spots, they've really kind of put a focus on that. I wonder if that is going to be a red herring. Save the thoughts though, because we'll talk about that here in a little bit in terms of, how far are we going to go down the path of like a Darth Talon, or, him really trying to, recruit her as an apprentice. And then the other thing that came up recently, Whitwer had said this a few times, but he said this show is bad guys versus worse guys, and Maul's on the bad guy of the equation. So we've got the good guys and the bad guys. There are bad guys and the worst guys. The worst guys being the Empire, the bad guys being Maul and his group, and then we've also got another group of questionably good security or police officers that we'll talk about here as well in the TDF, the Tactical Defense Force. In total, there's 10 episodes. The first 2 episodes air, of course, on Disney Plus here on Tuesday morning, 2 a.m. Central our time. We're going to get 2 episodes. I'll run through the names here. The Dark Revenge, Sinister Schemes. April 13th will be Whispers in the Unknown with Pride and Vengeance. After that, April 20th, we get Inquisition and Night of the Hunted. April 27th, Call to the Oblivion. The Creeping Fear is, and that's a name that if you've been around a while, you know what that name means. And then the last 2 episodes will air on May 4th, Strange Allies, and then the finale. So 10 episodes crammed into a matter of just 5 weeks, which is really great as a viewer, but really not that great as a content creator, because we have to put that stuff together.
It's a lot of work. No, it's a lot of work.
Last thing, and then I want your thoughts on all this, really. The last thing this is probably one of the more interesting things. Like, I'm a huge Kevin Kiner fan. I've always loved his work. I think that the song that he does at the end of Twilight of the Apprentice in Rebels season 2, I love that song. Like, just that one piece where everything's kind of coming together, and Kanan's blind, and you see Ahsoka kind of turn and go back into the cave, and it's crescendoing, and it really ends with Ezra, opening the holocron. That piece of music is just so one of my favorites. But he's such a great composer in his own right. He's able to kind of come up with his own stuff that feels very much like Star Wars, and yet he can still take a lot of the John Williams stuff and blend it in, or just kind of change it a little bit and still make it feel like Star Wars. Well, he's actually helping out, from what I understand, but the main people that are tagged as the music composers for the series are Sean and Deanna Kiner. Those are his daughter and his son. So, and I think Sean's done some other work already, but this is I may be wrong, but this might be the first time that I think Deanna's actually done anything with this series. So I love the fact that, Clone Wars, Rebels, I think even Resistance, and now we've got this one. The Kiners, some level of Kiners are involved in the music, so that's going to bode well for me.
That's very Lucasfilm Animation. They're keeping it in the family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anything you want to add to the synopsis or the number of episodes or anything else on the music there before we get into the cast or the some of the questions here?
Yeah, the synopsis to me is like they're setting up Maul to try to be like the anti-hero, which I kind of have mixed feelings about that, because Maul is genuinely bad, and I know they're saying he's part of the bad guy faction going against the worst guys who would be the Empire and the Inquisitors. But like I said, it's like they're trying to paint him as an anti-hero, and no, I want to see Maul just being a bad dude, and so we'll see how it comes out. I don't think that's how the story is going to end up, but yeah, don't even give that impression. Just Maul is a killer, and he looks out for only himself. So let's keep it like that, and then it's kind of like then we have to choose between the lesser of two evils, versus someone becoming anti-heroic or an anti-hero, but still has heroic tendencies. That's just not Maul for me. But that's like I said, it's just a synopsis, a high-level synopsis, so it might not play out that way. I just don't like the way that they're kind of painting it there, that he's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
And then in regards to the we've talked about this, the scheduling and how they're releasing. It's still something that wrecks my mind, is like, why are they doing this? There has to be a reason, because this breaks like two, standard Disney Plus Star Wars show rules. Again, releasing midnight Pacific and then having it on a Monday. Normally it's like Tuesdays at like maybe 6 p.m. Pacific. At least that's how it's been for the last few shows, like Kenobi, Bad Batch, Ahsoka. Um, so there has to be a reason, and I want, again, I think it has, because it ends on May 4th. Maybe something's coming on May 4th, or maybe they want to get this out of the way so they can focus on Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't know, but it's something that has been bugging me ever since this schedule has been announced. Um, as far as the naming of the episodes, I think it's adequate. I'm curious to see what episode 8 is going to be about, the creeping fear. Again, like as Albert said, if you've been around the Star Wars block as long as we have, you know where that comes from. Um, and then there's Strange Allies.
Yeah.
And that has me curious. Finale is just generic, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
that one episode 9 before the finale, Strange Allies. What does that mean? So I'm curious to see, when it comes to those episodes 8 and 9. Those are going to be the crux of the show. I want to see what is behind those episodes.
Yeah. So when we get to the very end of this, we talk about the Razor Crest moment, meaning like a prediction that's so kind of wild and out there that you really can't predict it. I'll tie it into Strange Allies. I'll tie my prediction into Strange Allies. My excuse me, my Razor Crest moment will tie into that title, because just like you, I locked in on that and I thought, where did that what? And then suddenly my brain I started jumping through all kind of mental gymnastics to make this thing happen. So I'm going to will it into existence. But okay, so let's talk about the characters themselves. So of course we've got Maul, right? Played by Sam Witwer, as we mentioned. I've got a couple quotes here I want to talk about. This is something that, again, I mentioned, I think at the top of the show, where he did this interview with Star Wars Insider. I think it was Amy Ratcliffe who did the interview, so credit to her. She's an amazing person. But he's talking about Maul here. And the first quote is, he's confused and a little apprehensive. We pick up after the Clone Wars, the Empire is taken over, and Maul's reassessing everything. That makes sense, right? The whole galaxy is trying to reassess everything. There's been a complete switch of power. There's now a vacuum that exists because you don't have the Empire there. You've got groups that are starting to surface up, rising to power, whether it's the Hutts, the crime syndicates. Everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie because the Republic's gone, while at the same time you've got the dark shadow of the Empire still looming over their heads. He says he's trying to build a new power base, but he's not good at delegating. He doesn't trust many people. In the context of that quote is him saying that Darth Maul is someone who we're going to see him take matters into his own hands. When you think of like a traditional crime boss, they have their minions, they have the lackeys, they send them out and do all the dirty work, and they kind of stay hidden. Think more like, the Kingpin, right, from Marvel. Daredevil's on my mind. That's generally what happens. But you got Maul, who is so used to being in the trenches and so used to doing the legwork, no pun intended, doing the legwork, we're going to see shades of that for him. I think over time, I'd like to see him try to distance himself from that, like really try to start understanding and working as a true crime boss, and allowing his lackeys to do the work, and so he can stay hidden in the shadows. I think he has to, especially if the Empire is going to be on his scent at some point. But yeah, him not trusting many people. The only person that we know for a fact that he is going to trust, they've said explicitly, is going to be Rook Kast, which is the Mandalorian. She's been loyal to him forever. I mean, ever since the Clone Wars. So she's never left him by his side. We'll get into the other two characters here as well. But I mean, I think where do you think you put him, as far as reassessing the Empire? Is he trying to lay low? Do you think he's trying to invite a fight from the Empire? Because if there's any one person that's fueled by revenge, it's Darth Maul, right? He's got this long hatred for Kenobi. It drives him almost to the very existence and all the way to the very end of this. But he's got a bone to pick with Palpatine, especially with what happened to him and the fact that Palpatine killed his brother, aka also his apprentice. I wonder if he is trying to invite, a conflict with the Empire.
Yeah, I think he is. He wants revenge. I mean, that has been the crux of his life since Naboo, right? He wants revenge against Kenobi. He wants revenge against Palpatine. for feeling abandoned, for him abandoning him more or less. He wants his revenge. He wants to take on the Empire. I think he does want to go out and attempt to take out Palpatine, but he can't do it in his current situation.
Yeah.
And so I think he's this is the beginning of him playing the long game, hopefully for him to get to a point where he can effectively challenge the Empire, throw wrenches in the Empire's schemes and then eventually get to Palpatine and get his revenge. I do think that he doesn't trust anyone because, with the exception of maybe a handful of people, Rookcast, Savage Opress, everyone has betrayed him. So that's why he's just not trusty. So I'm curious to see, again, based on what Sam said at MegaCon, that we're going to see a more a wider range of emotion coming from Maul. I'm curious to see how these new characters play into his circle of trust. We talk about Devin, the Twi'lek Jedi that he wants to bring in as his apprentice. The other two, who were the other two? Icarus and Scorn. How does he feel about them? We obviously see him in the vignettes and in the trailer fighting by his side, but how does he truly feel about them? So I'm curious to see how that grows with this show.
Yeah. There's some of the other quotes here. And this is where we get into these new dimensions, these new layers of Darth Maul. Sam's talking about, he says he learned that people have valuable points of view, and unlike Palpatine, he needs to hear bad news sometimes in order to become the Shadow Lord, in the context of that quote. And this is where he gets into this whole thing about, and I think this is probably where I think you'll feel a little bit better. He's talking about, if Palpatine is is evil, if he had a scale, Palpatine's a 10. I think he says Vader is like a 9.98, and that 0.2% is unless you're Luke Skywalker, right? He's just a bad guy.
Right, exactly.
But that we get a Maul here who's somewhere in the 8.5. Still really horrible. Still a bad guy. I don't know that we're going to paint him as an anti-hero, although I have that as a question down below. But he's still going to be doing bad things because he is an 8.5. But if we get somebody who is more open to hearing people's points of view and becomes more trusting, those are the things that I've always said. Palpatine's kind of the exception, but someone trying to take power or rise to a level of power to take on something like the Empire, you're not going to do it by being a 10 unless you're Palpatine. You're not going to do it unless you're a 9.98 unless you're Vader. He's just not those guys. I love them to death, but he's not. And so he's got to figure out ways to bring people to the table, right? The proverbial table, how to build up his group. And that's going to have to mean he's going to have to change some aspects of his life and how he talks to people, how he persuades people, how he manipulates people, how he listens to people. I think at one point in one of the interviews, they mentioned that there is one person that he actually does listen to. Like, he takes advice and acts on it in this series, and that's going to be Rookcast, right? He trusts her that much.
Exactly.
That he's going to do that. So that's a level of growth for the character. And, I don't want to talk too far in advance here about where I hope this series goes, because I don't think it's a one and done. I don't think it's a 1-season series. I think it's probably a 3-season series if I had to put some money on it. But even if they just did 2, maybe the first one is getting him to kind of level set or reset the playing board with everybody by the end of season 1. But I would love to see him at some point actually make it to the top. I'd love to see that growth, and I'd love to see him kind of build on these new skills, whether they're soft skills or hard skills, and have him grow as a leader. Again, still a horrible leader, still a horrible person at an 8.5. But, Kingpin is a really bad person as well. But yet he still was able to kind of rise to power. And then just one other thing that I want to mention too, because it kind of ties into this, when Sam Witwer is talking about, Darth Maul, that we are going to get a different version of Darth Maul where when he speaks and he's talking about things, it's going to make you kind of scratch your head and go, well, he's not wrong. Right. You can see his point of view, and that doesn't necessarily make him a good person, because the actions are what ultimately determine whether or not somebody's good or bad. But the motivation could be earnest. And I think that's what we're going to see here. So I'm curious to see how all of that kind of plays in and what kind of new facets we get of the Darth Maul character.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm excited to see. Because, Sam said it in this interview from the Star Wars Insider. Again, he said a lot of stuff at his panel at MegaCon. Um, I think we're going to see a different Maul. But for me, I, I want to trust the story. I want to make sure that if it makes sense, I can accept it. That's my thing. But for me, Maul still has to genuinely be a bad guy. Now, if he brings in more people into his circle of trust, and then he's able to coordinate more, that's what he needs to do to, like you said, to get to where he wants to be. Um, but at the root, what's driving him is his hatred. Again, when we can go back to talking about the dark side like we did before, but is his hatred and his need for revenge against the Empire and Palpatine. That needs to be what drives him, not necessarily his alliances. That's why a lot of these, what we've seen so far as from trailers and vignettes and like a couple of the titles for the episodes, kind of lend to see, okay, this is we're going to see something different, but at the core, Maul still needs to be who he is, and from coming from me. So again, I'm curious to see where this all leads up. But what I'm most curious about is this new Maul, and is it just going to be a different layer with the same core, or is his core going to change? Which I don't want it to, but again, if it makes sense in for the sake of the story, I'm for it. So let's see how it plays out.
All right. So on that note, then I got a quote here, and I want you, because this kind of it kind of goes up against what you just said here a little bit. This is again what we were talking about, this new version of Maul. He says, "This is Maul speaking, looking at the galaxy and saying, boy, we could sure use a Jedi Knight or two. At least with the Jedi, there's something to respect there. This Empire, he sees no value there.
Right.
Just the naked grab for influence, power, and money. Principles are gone." And he looks at that with a certain level of distaste. He may not have agreed with the Jedi Knights, but at least they had principles. You knew what you're dealing with, and you could reason with that. There's no reasoning with the Empire. That is that's a level of maturity, I think, that I would not have expected from somebody like Maul, who was just kind of this. He'd been trained to be just kind of like this savage killer, right? All his life.
He was essentially Darth Sidious' weapon. That's what he was. He was just essentially a sword. Not much, not anything more, not anything less.
Yeah. So now you've got him looking at this and going, "Wow, the Empire is bad. Like, there's no value here. There's no honor. You can't respect them. It's just, like you said, a naked grab for power." That to me feels weird because we just talked about this in last night's episode about what the Sith want, and that is ultimate power, right? They just want power. It's greed, and the more they can have, the more they get, the more they want. And yet he's looking at this and going, "That's not the right way to do it." Right? There's some principles there that he has that I think have come as a result of everything that's happened, right? Whether it's being bested by Kenobi, going crazy, getting you legs, killing Kenobi's love interest, whether it was Savage being killed, being imprisoned by Palpatine, being tortured by Palpatine, being hunted by across the galaxy. There's a lot of stuff that's happened, and it's showing him that he's now look at this and go, okay, maybe power isn't just the only thing that you need to have. And if you do, there's there's more noble way. There's an honorable way. I don't know if that's the right word for Maul, right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's something about that he's actually acknowledging now.
I think it also goes, and this is just pure speculation on my part, but he was just a hired gun. He was essentially a sword for Darth Sidious, and once he outlived his usefulness, Sidious essentially said, "Okay, I'm done with you."
Right.
I think that from his point of view, how he was initially taught was, you go out and take the power, you take what you want, and I think what the Empire does now with Palpatine sitting at the top is now they kind of hide behind the bureaucracy of the Empire. And essentially the Sith, being Vader and Palpatine, are just using the Empire's bureaucracy to take what they want and sitting behind them versus being up front and just forcefully taking it by force.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't sit well with him because again, the way he was taught was that you go out and you take what you want, right?
Yeah.
You
Right.
don't rely on anyone else. Um, I think that's where he sees the dishonor. I mean, what's honorable about a Sith, right? But the dishonor is because they're essentially they essentially have, you know, brainless lackeys in the empire's bureaucracy going out and doing what they should be doing with their own hands.
Yeah.
I think that I want to say I want to hope that that will come out at least a little bit for his to say. And then obviously, you know, he's being hunted. He's being hunted by the Empire. Palpatine knows he still exists. And that's why, you know, I assume we see this Inquisitor show up eventually in this show. He's being hunted. He's actually said it in a couple of the lines in the trailers that he's being hunted. Of course, you're going to hate these people. You're going to think that, you know, you're without honor, especially because they're sending essentially what are you know, dark side lackeys in the Inquisitors, and Palpatine or Vader are not coming themselves to try to take him out. And I
Yeah.
think he
Right.
sees that as not just dishonorable but disrespectful. You
Yeah.
know, hey, I'm not a slouch. You can't send these force wielding lackeys to come and try to take me out. You need to come and take me out yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost an insult to him to see these guys
Exactly.
show up.
Right.
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 So he's going to have a bone to pick there. Although we know, I mean, yeah, we'll talk about who lives and who dies here a little bit as well. But, you know, so maybe, so on the same theme here, he does kind of reassure us that he is, quote, the same ruthless, dangerous figure in the new show. If you cross him, you're done. I think we've seen glimpses of that just in the trailers that we've already seen. And he still manipulates people, but he's drawn new lines that he will not cross. That's interesting to think about, right?
That is interesting too. And that goes back to my, I don't want to say concern, but to my question is he from the core, has he changed?
Yeah.
And I'm from of the belief that his core needs to remain the same. But again, and if it makes sense and it fits the story, you know, I'll support it.
Right.
I just want, I'm curious to see how it plays out. Really, that's really what, because this is new for Maul.
This is where that's the part where he says there are new behaviors that might make a viewer think. He kind of has a point. Again, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying a character has a point. It's what they do. It's the actions and the behaviors that follow that determine whether or not we have Maul, the same person, versus someone who's turned over a new leaf. And I don't think they're going to cross that with this series. So I think they'll stay true to his character in that regard. Okay, just a couple more here. He said he's learning how to say things in ways people can hear. So this is in reference to, you know, when he pitched the idea to Ahsoka to join him back at season 5 of the Clone Wars. Do you remember that? He was trying to recruit her. You know, he says he, you know, wants to go kill his, you know, you go kill your old master. And Ahsoka turns around and is like, that's my best friend. Like, you know, you can't, she was insulted by the fact that he didn't even acknowledge Anakin as somebody more than just, quote, his old master. And so from that's the context of the quote. So, you know, how he approaches Devin may be a little bit different here, right? He may have a little bit more kid gloves. I think he's still going to be manipulative in his words and what he's trying to do, his true intent, but he might be a little bit more savvy. He might have a better game, if you will, in trying to recruit somebody rather than just taking the, you know, being the blunt weapon that he is proverbially, right?
Right. And look at, I mean, he's 0 for 2 trying to recruit apprentices. Well, no, I'll give him one out of 3 because he did have his brother, you know, Savage, but that was almost a given. For apprentices that he tried to recruit on his own, yeah, he wasn't successful. So, yeah, you know, you learn
one
from
of 4 actually.
Yeah, who would be the 4th?
Ezra later down the road.
Ezra, that's right, Ezra. Duh. Yeah, you know, like Yoda says, you know, the greatest teacher failure is, and maybe he did learn from those failures of trying to recruit, you know, Ezra, Ahsoka, and now Devin, or not Devin, but Ezra and Ahsoka, and, you know, come with a different technique trying to lure Devin as his apprentice.
Yeah. He'll have a different approach on this. The last quote I hear is actually from Filoni. So all that has been Sam Witwer talking about it. This is actually from Dave Filoni, and this is another interesting one here. He says, I think people feel bad for Maul because he's so relatable. He makes mistakes. He's not perfect. He desires power and then he gets toppled. That's relatable. We all probably feel like that when we have a low moment. He doesn't just deal with it. He just doesn't deal with it well. He keeps trying to attack his problems the same way. He can never really let go of his hatred or his anger. So, yeah, I think at his core, that's not going to change. I mean, nothing really changes for Maul. Like, he stays consistent all the way through his lifespan, with arguably that last moment of his life, when after he's been bested by Kenobi and he's laying there in his arms and he suddenly has hope that Luke Skywalker is the chosen one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, like, and even then, that's probably just because he's bleeding out and he's dying or whatever, right? I don't know that he actually changed, but that way, and maybe I should say this too. Like, we did see him have he was very much grieving when Savage died, right? Because he did love him. As crazy as that may sound, I think we've talked about this in the show. I don't know if he felt it was true love or he would acknowledge that it was love, but based on his reaction and how close he felt, and especially with him saying in this series that that he's living with that regret that he failed his brother, that he looks at this as a failure to his brother. Those are I think by and large the character is going to continue to stay true. So no worries there. I mean, there are some things in here that that make you think, have they really changed this character a lot? I don't think it is. I think we're going to just see the way he goes about it is maybe a little bit different, but the same intent and motivation, the selfishness is still going to be there. It's just being masked because he knows that's how he's going to have to do in order to get ahead and build this group up to go against the Empire.
No, I would agree. It's like I said, I think that's how it's going to work out, is that, at his core, Maul is probably going to be who he always was. Just a couple of other emotional layers on top now that he's matured. I just don't want his core to soften at all, but we'll see. If that's probably going to be my run-in topic tonight, is that, because with the quotes, putting this stuff together for the show, the quotes, and then reviewing all of the trailers and vignettes that we've gotten over the last 2 weeks, I'm like, plus what Dave Filoni has said, what Sam Witwer has said, is Maul going to change at his core? So that's the question that arose for me. So
yeah,
I'm ready to see if I'm right or wrong.
Right. I don't think you're wrong. All right, so let's quickly on the comments. Mudhorn Station says, I'm really looking forward to Maul Shadow Lord for many reasons, but must admit one aspect I'm looking forward to most is Rookcast and the Mauldalorians. So big Mauldalorian. I mean, you've got a Mudhorn symbol, so that it tracks. Mm-hmm. Justin said, so in a way, Maul kind of started the rebellion. Yeah, probably. There's a couple of different ways you could define where the rebellion started, but everybody had a hand in it, including the Force, the will of the Force. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the other characters, and we won't spend nearly as much time on them because we just don't have a lot to go off of, quite honestly, right? Maul is the focus of this, and so there's been a lot of discussion and background on this character already, on what to expect. But we've got Rookcast being played by Vanessa Marshall, so no stranger to Star Wars voiceovers. Going to be good to have her back as Rookcast. Mm-hmm. She is the first lieutenant to Maul, and like we mentioned, Maul actually listens to her. You've got Icarus, which is one of the Zabraks that we see. We've got Icarus and Scorn. Icarus is played by Steve Bloom. So again, I mean, legendary Steve Bloom. I mean, God, he's done everything. We're not going to talk about his work history here. We also have the 11th brother, which is AKA the Crow. This is the one that we know Ahsoka is going to kill eventually in Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi, yep.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on a limb right now and just say he lives in this series. So I know that's a bold prediction, but I'm predicting that the 11th brother will survive in this series. And then we've got Devin Izara. So this is played by Gideon Adlin. She's the Jedi Padawan to Master Iko Dio Daki. We'll talk about him in just a quick second. She's on the run from the Empire, and they're both hiding on Janix. Janix, by the way, we talked about this, I think, when we were breaking down the comic book.
The comic book, yep.
Yeah, and it does feel like, I think we used the term Gotham City as a kind of relative city that you can expect, right? You've got a lot of crime. It's far away from everywhere. Like the Empire hasn't gotten here yet,
Right.
although we know that's going to happen in the series. And you've got a lot of corruption.
Yep.
You've got the police force that may be a little corrupted. They seem like they're not a lawful good by any means. So they're hiding in the city. It's probably a good cover given this everything that's going on. But just more on Devon real quick. She's an adept fighter, but filled with angst. She's a teenage girl living in a world where she's trying to decipher right from wrong. That makes her very susceptible, in my opinion, to somebody like Maul coming in and trying to influence her, trying to turn her to at least, if not the dark side, at least get on his team to help him and see his plight of like, hey, as we've seen in the trailer, we're both, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy kind of thing, right? Or we have a common enemy, I should say. And so he's trying to sell this idea of joining him because together we can take down this empire who just wiped out all your friends and family, the Jedi Temple, those guys, the bad guys that did this. That's not me. In fact, I'm trying to kill them too. Like it feels like it's a pretty good pitch. We'll see if she joins in there. And then lastly, and I'll get your thoughts on Devon Azara and kind of what you're looking forward here. But Miknovitz says Maul and Devon is one of the most important relationships in the series, and we're excited for fans to see it. This is not going to go the way you think it is. Those are infamous words now in Star Wars.
In Star Wars, exactly.
Whether it's Rian Johnson or Luke Skywalker saying it, or whoever else has already said it in the series, but it's not going to go the way you think it is. That line plays into my crazy theory at the very end. So I'm not going to spill that just yet. But I guess when you hear Devon Azara, I guess what are you thinking about there? What are you looking forward to? I mean, again, it's not a whole lot, but we know that she is a young Padawan, still very susceptible and impressionable.
So they use the term Padawan, which makes me think that, like Caleb Dune, aka Kanan Jarrus, that she actually began her training on the way up to Jedi knighthood in the temple, right? Because they use the term Padawan. They really didn't, like we talk about like Ezra or like Luke Skywalker being trained outside of the temple, with the order being gone. They never really use that term Padawan. So she has some of that, I guess, the core teachings of the Jedi Order, having started her training in the temple. But now things have changed. Now she has she's essentially, still being taught the ropes by a Jedi master. They're on the run. They're being hunted. It's not trying to use the Force to do the right thing. It's use the Force for survival, which may in turn allow herself, even though she's been told you can't trust Maul. Maul will never be your ally, right?
Mm-hmm.
She is using her instincts of survival to say, well, true, but we have the same goal. Maybe we should start working with him. And of course, that opens the door for, potentially to become an apprentice, potentially fall into the dark side. So I want to, what I'm looking for from Devon is the mindset of being a Jedi Padawan who had your training started at the temple before Order 66. You've gone through the horror of Order 66. You've lived a life on the run because you're being hunted. I want to see what her mindset is now. And how does she live day to day, knowing that potentially around a corner there could be an Inquisitor ready to take your life. So I'm curious to see how they wrote this character, how the Gideon Alden is going to play this character, and I'm curious to see what the dynamic is going to be with Maul. And is she going to accept it? Is she just going to use him as a tool like Sidious did? How is this all going to play out? And then, of course, we talked about this when we first started. When we broke down the trailers, is the master Echo Daildaki. Where is he going to end up?
Mm-hmm.
We saw a clip it was a vignette where he was already separated from Devon, and so something is going to happen there, and I'm curious to see, where does that Jedi end up at the end of all of it? So there's a lot of questions there.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to quickly. We talked about him, Master Io Diodaki. So this is played by Dennis Haybert,
That's awesome.
aka the Allstate guy. If you know who I'm talking about, he's been in other stuff, but I always see him like, oh, that's the Allstate dude. He's got the really really deep voice.
Yep.
But he's Devon's current Jedi Master. Well, we'll talk about who lives and who dies, but I have him on my death watch. I don't think he makes it out of this series.
Same here.
Yeah. And then we get to Brander Lawson, who is a character that is, at the forefront of the comic book. So we know him pretty well, you and I, and anybody that's listened to our breakdown. I think that was a Patreon exclusive where we broke down that first episode. Maybe not. I don't remember now. But Brander Lawson is played by Wagner Mora. He is the captain of the Tactical Defense Force, the TDF, which is, again, the police essentially there on Janix. It doesn't seem like everybody's on the up and up there. It seems kind of corrupted. Think of again, Gotham City and, people there, Gotham police being intrigued by money, that sort of thing. So, we'll see where he is. He seems like he is a good person, but we know for a fact he is kind of a maverick. Like he doesn't care if people, if he's reprimanded for what he does kind of thing. We got some of that in that first issue. He is a former bounty hunter. That came out in the comic book. That was an interesting aspect. We haven't seen anything as a result of that in the comic yet, but maybe we see bits and pieces of that here in the series. Maybe the way he goes about apprehending people, maybe he's a little bit more brutal than he needs to be. And then we also learned that he has a son in the comic book. Funny enough, and you mentioned this, I hadn't seen this. In the credits, when you look at the cast, there is somebody named Riley Lawson, who's played by Charlie Bushnell. You and I were just talking before we came on air. We're assuming that Riley Lawson is that son of Brander Lawson. So
right.
I don't know the age. We don't know if they're young or older, that kind of thing. But it's a significant enough character that they've given him, given him credit in the credits himself. So he's going to have some dialogue. He'll probably be on the show as well. So we expect that character to kind of be, maybe not. I mean, it seems like this series right now is going to be primarily focused on Maul and Devon and fighting the Empire. But the angle at which the TDF interacts and how they play into all this, I'm not really sure. Like, I haven't got a good handle on it. It feels like they're just kind of going after Maul because of things that are happening, trying to shut down all the crime syndicates. But once the attention of the Empire shows, like, I don't know. It feels like I don't know what's going to happen to these guys because they're just going to be taken over by the stormtroopers and everybody else from the Empire that come in.
And from the comics, we know that's something that Brander wants to avoid.
Right.
Like really wants to avoid. And it could be his experience with the Empire as a bounty hunter. But there is a reason why he does not want the Empire to take over that system.
Yep. We also have Two Boots. That is the droid sidekick that he has. That is played by Richard Ayoade. I know he's done some other stuff in Star Wars. I forget now.
He had other voices. I always recognize him as Moss from the British comedy The IT Crowd.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. I forgot about that.
So he's very funny in that show. So from what we've read in the comics from Two Boots, he sounds like even more comedical K2SO. So I'm looking forward to see how he plays this character.
Yeah, and that would be nice. Like, I think we need some a little bit of brevity there, and doesn't need to be comical. We don't need slapstick, but if we have like the dry humor of like a K2SO or even some funny bits, I think it still keeps it in that animation realm and still keeps it a little bit more lighthearted. We don't need everything super dark in Star Wars, although I don't mind that either. But okay, that's Two Boots. Spybot, tell me about this one, because this was somebody that they've not really talked about, but I know you saw something. I think it was at one of the conventions that you went to here recently.
Yeah. Spybot is going to be Darth Maul's droid, and he is going to be voiced by David Collins. If you're familiar with Star Wars animation or Star Wars or Skywalker sound, David Collins has had his hand in a lot of sound engineering for Lucasfilm and Skywalker sound, as well as he voiced a couple of characters in Lucasfilm animation projects.
Clone Wars,
Clone Wars and whatnot. He's also, if you go to Star Wars Celebrations, he's also an MC at one of the stages every year.
Yep.
So you get a chance to see him front and center. But from what we were told is that this is going to be Darth Maul's droid. He's never had a droid before. and he is not going to be the nicest droid to Darth Maul and his crew. So this,
Oh.
I foresee some comedy that maybe, in the story in itself is not supposed to be comedy, but the way that we see it will be comedy, because it's like, who is going to be mean or rude to
Right.
Maul?
Stand up to Maul. Yeah.
Stand up to Maul, and not only that, but be a droid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna see some of that. And again, that the name is Spybot, and very curious name for a droid. So yeah, looking forward to see what this character is and how they're gonna play out.
Yep. We also got Luti Vario, played by Chris Diamantopoulos. I didn't know this. You had mentioned that he does a voiceover in the Invincible series over on Amazon.
Yeah, he voices Donald. So if you're familiar with the character Donald from Invincible, he voices that character, and he's voicing Luti Vario. And they also talked a little bit about him in Sam Witwer's panel, and apparently he is going to be funny on purpose.
Okay.
So he's kind of like a lighten the mood kind of guy,
Right?
not quite Jar Jar-ish, but he's going to play that role in this show. There's not much else known about him.
Okay. And then last, maybe certainly not least, but Marok, which is the the Inquisitor that we see in Star Wars, the Ahsoka series. There's a lot of theories. I think we had the same theory when that series came out, that he's been long dead. So I think the only question is, if you're not familiar with Marok, again, he's an Inquisitor, but I think the big question is whether or not he is alive in this series, or if he's still just some kind of a conjured
Zombie.
Night Sister spirit zombie thing, right? So. That'd be pretty cool to if we get something there, we get some more explanation into what's going on with that guy.
I'm curious to see, because we know his story, but I'm curious to see, what more of a backstory he has, and like his, how does he get from being alive and then still being dead and reanimated? I want to know how it goes from point A to point B with that guy.
Yeah. And this series may not lend itself to as an opportunity to do that. There's part of me that wants to keep the intrigue there as well. But so, if he dies and comes back in the series, that'd be pretty cool. But who knows? Okay, so let's talk quickly. I know we're still got some time here, but I want to talk about kind of some of the series questions. So these are questions that I threw together for us to kind of extend a dialogue about what we're hoping to see in the series. But question number one, will we see Maul portrayed as an anti-hero, and do you want to see Maul as an anti? I know you've already answered this, but officially on the record, what's your answer?
I don't. I want to. Okay, let me take that back. So, do I want to see him have the attitude and the emotions of an anti-hero?
Mm-hmm.
I do not.
Okay.
I want to see, if he does something heroic, it has to be because it benefits him. I don't want him to just be an anti-hero and be heroic for heroic's sake. I want him to actually still be who Maul is, driven by rage, driven by hate, driven by pain, to get his revenge on those that have, run afoul of him.
Yeah. Okay. I would say the same thing. Like, it's a slippery slope, right? Like, if you think about this, and I'm just going to paint a scenario, I'm not saying this is something that I'm predicting or, I expect to happen. But if you had an instance where you had the Empire doing something really awful, and maybe they're doing something really awful to Indara or Indara, Devon, gosh, I'm thinking of Acolyte, Devon, or anybody else, and Maul steps in and does the right thing, again, for his own gain, own purposes, there's a part of me that that's going to feel like, yeah, that's exactly right. The Empire deserves exactly that, to be brutally killed by Maul because of what they were about to do, right? That's where I feel like, okay, you suddenly start sympathizing with the character. I mean, not sympathize with the character, but you certainly start feeling that the character is portraying heroic moments, even though the motive is not the same. You know what I mean? Like, he's
right. Or maybe acquiring a moral compass of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think he's going to go there, but I can see them at least doing that in the series, giving them these moments to kind of pull you in, from just a purely creative perspective, right? To kind of pull you in and feel like, oh yeah, he's a good guy. And then they're going to just turn around on us and say, nope, he really is still the bad guy. You just been duped, right? This has just been one big rope-a-dope kind of thing. So that's where I feel like I'm a little conflicted. I'm with you though. I don't necessarily need to see him as a true anti-hero. I'd like to see. I'm fine with him doing anti-hero type stuff, so long as it's against the Empire, and so long as that I still understand where the motive is, and that his true gain is for himself because of something awful like revenge. That way I would be okay with. But I don't suspect that he's going to be suddenly a hero by any means. At least by our definition. How much Maul? Sorry, how much Maul? Okay,
we hope we see a lot of Maul.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, hope we get a lot of Maul. How much of the Lucas Maul / Darth Talon story do you think we're going to see? Now, I want to say we don't have a lot of information about this, to be honest.
What I was about to say,
yeah, there's not a lot out there. We just know that it was, he liked that idea. I don't even know how much of the legend stuff, he was trying to adopt. But I think just at its core concept of Maul trying to take on an apprentice, it being a Twi'lek, do you think we're going to see? Maybe this is the question. Do you think we'll actually see Devon become like a apprentice, truly turn to the dark side, and forsake her training as a Jedi Padawan?
So, I want to say yes, but I want to throw a caveat in there saying that I don't think we're going to see full blown black and red tattoo and being named Darth Talon.
Yeah,
I think we'll see
that's season 2,
and I don't think we're going to see it happen in this season. I think we could, if we see it happen, it'll be in seasons that follow. I think what I would like to see is the groundwork. So she's still by the end of the series, depending on what the status is of her master, that she still considers herself a Jedi or a Padawan following the light side of the Force, but she has Maul in the back of her mind, and already, if they've worked together, maybe it's starting to build that level of trust, regardless of what Maul's background is, and maybe starting to see his point of view. You know what I mean? Because they did mention, Filoni did say, or Whitwer, I don't remember who said that, we're going to see certain situations from Maul's point of view and be like, you know what, he's right. Maybe that is in her head as well. And it starts to get her to come around to seeing his point of view, which would eventually lead her to the dark side in his apprentice. But I don't think we'll see it in this season. And when it happens, I don't think we're going to see Darth. We're not going to hear the name Darth Talon. We're not going to see red and black tattoos. It's just going to be her following him. I think that's as far as we'll get.
Yeah. And you could get into the technicality of we're not going to get a Darth anything because he's not even a Sith.
He's not even a Sith Lord technically anymore, right?
Right. So that won't happen. Do we get her, becoming an ally with him by the end of the series, that eventually maybe into like a season 2, season 3, she suddenly becomes, more of a full-fledged dark side user, corrupt and starting to become corrupt and evil, have evil tendencies and doing evil acts and duties. Maybe if that continues on to season 2 and season 3, I don't think she's going to do this. I think they're going to lead us on for a number of episodes. They're going to start leaning that way, but I think the light is still going to be there for her. I think at the end of the day, especially, I think I'll have a better sense of where she goes once we hear her talk and we get to understand like her demeanor and all that. That's still out for me. But I think by the end of the series, I think she's going to have a moment where she has already committed to helping him, right? Even against her master's, will. Her master tells her don't do this just because he's on, he's got the same enemy doesn't make him a good person or somebody that we need to ally with, or someone that we can trust. I think she's still going to go against that because it's weird that they focus in on the teenage angst of it all. If there's anything that, and I can speak from experience here, as most of us can, that teenagers, right, they have a natural sense to rebel against, what's their parents, especially, right, or their masters. And so I think she probably falls into some of that, right? The angst drives her to kind of rebel and maybe align with Maul. But similar to Ezra, I don't think she has it in her heart. She's not necessarily an evil person. She has no reason to be evil. outside of the Empire, killing the Jedi Order.
Mhm.
So I think she'll I think she'll turn around. I think she'll come to realize this is not the way it should have gone. My master was right. He's probably dead now at this point in the series. And so she's going to have to turn away from that. So whether or not she makes it out of the series, I'll talk about that here a little bit when we get to Death Watch. But I think they're going to lead us. They're going to try to lead us on thinking that she's going to do that. I will say this, though. I think there will be an apprentice at the end of the series, which plays into, I keep teasing my Razor Crest moment. I'll get to that here in just a little bit. Okay. So the question of will Devin turn to the dark side was up. I say no. I don't think she's going to do it. What about you?
I don't think this season. No, I don't think she will.
Okay. So you're saying if she does ally with him and she lives past season 1, you're saying high probability that she would turn to the dark side.
I think that if she lives past season 1, and then there's the status of her master.
True.
If the status of her master is what we think it's going to be, then I think there's a good chance, because at that point, her the person that she was following that was teaching her right from wrong and what is gone, that voice of reason is gone. Now all she has is Maul, and she's young, and again she's going through a lot of the same situations, being hunted by the Jedi, running for her life.
Yeah.
That is the easiest recipe to become like he is. And so I see that happening. If she survives, I see that happening in either the next season or a third season if it happens.
Right.
But again, it depends on the status of her master. Where does that character end up? Again,
Mm-hmm.
I know we've talked about the Razor Crest moment, and we talked about are they not the death list. I think Death Watch. I think he's going to end up not making it, but we don't know. So we'll see.
So you're thinking more of a product of her environment, depending on how things go here in season 1.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I don't think she's going to make a turn. I don't think she's going to make a turn in season 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that too. Okay, will Vader or Palpatine? So, wait, quickly, in the chat here, and I'll get to your question, one up versus CPU, because we're actually going to talk about other cameos. But he also said she can't really become a Darth without Palpatine's student, right? Yes, that's true. Like he's the only one that could, knight her,
grant that title. Exactly,
give her that title.
But she could very well be an apprentice. There's nothing that forbids her from being Maul's apprentice.
Sure. Paula 1966 says, hello, do you both think that the pink Twi'lek in Maul Shadow Lords will become Darth Talon? Yeah, we just talked about that. If you want to rewind a little bit, but I think what we're saying is there won't be a Darth Talon per se per title. At most, I think the only aspects that, and the way I would capsulize this is at most, I think what we're seeing being borrowed from those conversations between Lucas and Filoni about that Darth Talon and Darth Maul kind of pair up that was supposed to happen here in the final 3 episodes. I think it's probably just the fact that he's got an apprentice, and they're going to lean into some of those conversations and some of the situations that exist and play with this idea of, should I ally with someone who has the same enemy as me, right? Should I make a deal with the proverbial devil in order to get revenge or retribution for what happened to, the Jedi Order? I think they'll play with that, but I don't think we're going to necessarily get the Darth Talon and the tattooing and black leather, vixen type stuff. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get any of that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that, no.
Okay, so on that note there, so I'm going to ask the biggest cameo questions first, and then we can talk about other just miscellaneous cameos. But do you suspect that we will see either Vader and or Palpatine show up in this series? Now I say series because it could be a season 1, 2, or 2. Let's just leave it to season 1 for now, and then maybe you can talk about what you think for anything else beyond that.
I think we might. I don't want to say we will. And if we do, it's not going to be the entire character itself. I think if we see Vader or hear Vader, see Palpatine or hear Palpatine, it's going to be a transmission, a hologram. I think that's what we'll see. Season 1, though. Now, again, if we have season 2 or 3, I think for sure we're going to see one of them. And actually, I think for sure we'll see Vader. But again, I don't think they're going to make a full cameo in season 1. I think we could see them as a transmission or a hologram,
Yeah.
but not them like in person, or them cutting over to a scene like on a Star Destroyer or something like that. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we'll see a transmission or a hologram.
Okay. I'm gonna say so. I'll talk about Palpatine first. You think about Palpatine, you think about what was said during Star Wars Rebels, right? Filoni talked a lot about when they made that decision to bring Palpatine into the show and have him actually be there. Once he shows up, somebody has to die. Like that is like the purest evil. He's like a legendary, iconic character. Things are going to go really bad when Palpatine shows up. It's just inevitable. And so I don't think that Palpatine's going to show up in this season, right? They've already painted Janix as being really far away from the long arm of the Empire, at least when we start off. I think Palpatine, if we do see him, I'm with you. It's going to be a hologram subtype thing or whatever. I don't even think we'll get that. I think they'll save him if they want to for like a season 2 or season 3, if it makes sense to go there. Vader, though, although wait, let me say this one other thing. Palpatine, though, has, if you remember in the Clone Wars, when he found out that Darth Maul was still alive, he made it a point to go there and confront him directly. Like
Right.
he took it upon himself to go, and that's when he kills Savage Opress, and that's when he imprisons him and says, he's using the Force lightning and says, I'm not going to kill you. I've got other plans for you, which is pure torture in that one Citadel thing that he was trapped in, right? So Palpatine knows about Darth Maul, and he's already made an effort once to show up in person and do something that now he's now in charge of the Galactic Empire. He's got a lot of duties, he's real busy. He's got a lot of paper on his desk. So maybe he doesn't have the time to go deal with Maul. So that could still not happen. But Vader is an interesting one because there's a part of me that just wants to fanboy and think about a Vader versus Darth Maul fight and what that would look like. We know Vader is absolutely terrified. I'm sorry, Vader. We know Maul is absolutely terrified of Vader by the time we get to Rebels. So they have some kind of confrontation. Something in my mind, anyways. I'm not saying that's canon, but in my mind, they had an altercation and it didn't go well for Darth Maul. Whether that was at the very end when he toppled his Crimson Empire at that point, or maybe there was something else that goes on, but he's spooked. I mean, he sees Vader as just an absolute ghost and doesn't want anything to do with him, which is kind of crazy to think about when you think about Darth Maul. So, if Vader does show up, I think it needs to be something that happens at the finale of season 1, right? I don't want to start teasing that he's going to be here within a couple of episodes or anything like that. I think it has to culminate in that. And maybe that's our big cliffhanger is we don't know the fate of Darth Maul, or we don't know the fate of, whatever. I mean, we know the fate of him, but it still can be suspenseful. So I guess let me say that. So Palpatine, no. Vader, I'm going to say no. Like I want it to happen, but I'm going to say no, he doesn't show up in season 1. So that's just a guess. So anybody else that you would like to see cameo? One Up versus CPU had a question in the chat. He says, are Ahsoka and Ventress going to show up? So maybe do you think those two will show up? And then do you think, or is there anyone else that you would want to see show up as a cameo? Or maybe it's just someone that, maybe not necessarily you want to see, but you think may show up in a cameo?
If we talk about like heroic characters, like Ahsoka, I guess by now, Ventress is now an anti-hero, based off what we've seen from Tales of the Underworld or Tales of the Sith. No, Tales of the Underworld. She is now the anti-hero, which I understand now. I don't want to see any of those characters show up. For me, if they showed up, it would just kind of make a mess of the objectives that these particular groups of characters are trying to achieve, where the TDF and what was his name?
Brandon
Lawson. Yeah, Lawson trying to capture Maul, and then Maul trying to essentially evade capture himself from the Empire and building his crime empire. The Devin trying to essentially stay alive when here comes the Empire with the Inquisitors. I think if you threw Ahsoka or Ventress in there, it would just gum everything up, because those are 3 big arcs in this story that we're going to have to resolve. I don't know where a heroic character would fit into that. Now, that being said, if keep in mind, Ahsoka at this point is still kind of, flown in the wind, right? Not really, not a Jedi, right?
Well, and she's also laying low right now. Like
Laying low,
she does
exactly.
not want to be found.
Exactly. If they cross paths in that type of scenario where they don't want to be found, and again, it makes sense from a story perspective, I'm okay with it. But to come in and lightsabers blazing, I don't think that's needed. Uh, so for me, I would initially I would say no. I wouldn't want to see a cameo of those characters in this show. Let Maul stand on his own, right?
Yeah.
Um, but again, if it makes sense, because Ahsoka's laying low, Devin, Maul, they're laying low on the run. That makes sense. I can accept that. But from a heroic standpoint, lightsabers blazing, nah. Let Maul stand on his own.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like, I don't know that we're going to get a lot of cameos in this series. I mean, most series we don't. We like to think about it and it's fun to talk about. But to be honest, truth is we don't really see a lot. I think, over time we do. When you look at the Rebels series, over time we had like Tarkin show up. We had Lando Calrissian show up. We had Leia show up. I mean, all that kind of makes sense. In this particular moment, because the Jedi are laying low, they don't want to be found, right? Unless something's happening where they're trying to snuff out the Jedi, right? Because they can't help themselves but be good. And even then, I would say, you've got two Jedi that are there now present, and they're the likely ones that are going to show up to do something. I just can't see any of the heroic people showing up. I think it's more likely that we would see some of the Empire people show up. Maybe, and this is, I don't know, this is, I don't even know if I truly believe or feel like this would actually happen, but if they send a Star Destroyer, I don't know, maybe that has what's his name on there? Tarkin, right? Or Tarkin's probably a little little far fetched. But maybe there's Thrawn. He could be there. He may not be as revered as he is by the time we get to like Star Wars Rebels, right? There's opportunities for, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other people that showed up. But yeah, I think it's probably people from like the Empire that may surface. I was trying to think maybe around the lines of like bounty hunters, that they would run into, that we have that would maybe have a guest appearance. But I just don't know with the number of characters. Like, there are a lot of characters in this series already. I just didn't know that they're going to have enough time to really introduce another cameo or bring in a cameo character, make it make sense, make it feel like it's not shoehorned in there for popularity or for fan service kind of thing.
Well, okay. So I heard this back in Star Wars Celebration in Chicago in 2019. Dave Filoni's nickname?
Wolf?
No. Fan service Filoni.
Oh, you're saying what they gave him.
So I don't think we'll see. I honestly think because he has the input of, like, especially Sam Witwer, because he's also the producer in this thing. They will try to keep the cameo fan service to a minimum, but we all know that Filoni loves his fan service. Now, I give him props because probably 75% of the fan service, what we consider fan service, makes sense, right? But then there's some that just are thrown in there to make us smile, right? I that's not something I would want to see in this series. This series, just from the look of it, has a lot darker tone than Rebels, Bad Batch, Clone Wars. Let Maul stand on his own. And I think with Sam Witwer coming in behind and being a producer in this series as well, I think they're going to kind of lay low on the fan service, even though, again, that's what Filoni loves to do. Lay low a little bit and let Maul grow on his own, because we only have 10 episodes, and they did explain that Maul's character emotionally is going to grow. You can't really fit that much more into it. Now, where, like you said previously, maybe some Empire level cameos here and there as a flyby or something like that, or maybe with a little bit of dialogue would make sense and fit. But if you bring in a heroic character into this, you can't. For some reason, in my opinion, I don't think you can just let them kind of lay low and be like a background
Yeah, you
one or
got to
two
deal with
line.
him from
You
a
got to
from a
deal with the
story
heroic
perspective.
character. Yeah, from a story. I think in Star Wars, for a heroic character, you have to do something with them.
Yeah.
Whereas for a bad guy, they're in cameos all the time,
Yeah.
and you don't really have to expand on that. So I hope we don't see that. But if we do, I hope it does make sense.
Okay.
But don't
Yeah.
put it beyond Filoni.
Yeah, I think there's always a chance with him. I would agree there. But I think he's done a pretty good job of making it make sense for most of the time.
For most of the time, I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. We're almost running out of time. We're almost out of time here. So let's get to Death Watch. I'm going to run through these characters, and we're just going to say lives or dies. Okay. Darth Maul
lives.
I'm just kidding. Lives. Rook Cast.
I think she's going to die.
Okay. And you don't need to explain why either, because we're out of time on this one. I'm gonna say death as well. Yeah, I don't know. Just have a feeling. Icarus.
Okay, so between the two, between Icarus and Scorn,
Icarus and Scorn, how about that?
One of them is going to die.
Yeah,
I think one of them will live.
Okay,
I don't know who, but one of them will.
Well, Icarus, the character of Icarus, right, in stories as the one that flies too close to the sun, right? So I'd say that's probably a dead.
Probably could be the one the name is foretelling. Yeah.
So I think Icarus dies, Scorn lives. The 11th brother lives. We know that because we see him in Ahsoka. Devin Azara.
I think she lives.
I think she lives as well.
I think she's going to be a tentpole of this series, so I think she's going to live.
Okay. Master Iko Diodaki. Dead.
I think he's going to die.
I think he's dead.
I think he's dead. Yep.
Brander Lawson.
I think he lives.
I think he lives as well. Yep. Two Boots.
I think he survives.
Survives for me as well. I don't know anything about Spybot. I say lives.
I say they're going to need him around. So I say he's going to be one of those people that are going to be too mean to die. So I think he's going to live.
Yeah. Luti Vario.
So I know nothing about this character other than the
comedy
name
character, right?
And then he's going to be the comedy, like the comic relief type character. I think honestly, I don't know what to think about it. I'm going to say he lives just because I don't know much about him. Yeah.
I'm going to say he lives too. Cause they rarely go and like kill off like the comedic characters, you know, it just doesn't always happen. And then we're getting, Marok lives. Or dies.
He
lives could live or die and be.
He could live or die, but he's still here.
He's still going to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
The road, so lives with air quotes, and then Riley Lawson, which is his son. Don't know anything about the character. I'm going to say lives.
I'm going to say lives. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. And then the last thing we do here is talk about a Razor Crest moment. So this is a wild and unpredictable prediction, something that can really just kind of be out there left field. And I know this is probably your first time doing it. So did you have anything that you want to throw out there as a wild prediction that you want to make? We'll note the time and you can have all the bragging rights if it comes true.
So this is a wild prediction, even though I just said I don't think it's going to happen.
That's okay.
I think my wild prediction is we will see a Vader full-blown cameo at the end of the series. It's kind of like what we saw in Rebels when, Vader first showed up at the end of, I think it was the first season or second season. I don't remember, but he showed up and that was it for the season. I think we're going to get something like that.
Yeah. Okay. My Razor Crest moment, and stay with me, cause this is what I do. I was thinking that when I mentioned earlier that we're going to be led on to believe that Darth Talon not Darth Talon, but Devin would be, turned to the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably going to be the case. But I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that by the end of the series, or maybe they'll just allude to it, but I wonder, I'm going to say Riley Lawson is a Force sensitive, and that Maul eventually tries to persuade him to join the dark side by the end of the series. And he does. Like, I don't know how we get there, but the fact that we've got the kid named, we've got Lawson as a character. Remember, I was saying, like, I don't know how he really plays into all this. Like, he's got to have some hook into Maul outside of just being the police force that goes around and looks for him. But wouldn't that be really kind of weird or crazy that if he did get an apprentice, it turns out to be this Riley Lawson kid instead, right? Or he suddenly decides that, okay, I can't turn Devin, but this other kid has been around here and he's susceptible and he is force sensitive. I can sense it. And so he goes and he tries to convince him to become his apprentice.
That is a prediction. I'm with that. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm saying that I agree with you. That is a prediction. And if let's notate it at 10:33 Central Time
right,
on
April 1st.
April 1st, April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
You called this, so that way, if it does happen, the Star Wars fandom will know that you called it first.
Exactly. Oh, they will never hear the end of it. They never heard the end of it when I made the call on the Razor Crest dying in season 2.
Lucasfilm will need to give you your own panel at Celebration if you are correct.
And royalties.
And royalties, yes.
For this.
Story royalties, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
That's a prediction, man.
Thank you. That's what I do. Okay. We'll end the show there. I mean, we're 5 days away, T-5, T-4 actually, because it's not too much longer here. I think we're both pretty excited. I mean, pretty hyped about the show. I'm looking forward to it, of course, like we've said. I think it's going to be a great ride. It's going to be a fast ride. I have a feeling it's going to be over before we even know it too, right. Especially since we're getting 2 episodes a week. But man, this is it's a character that I really love the fact that we've gotten so many different layers and dimensions of this character, and it feels like we're going to get not just the same cookie cutter thing that we've had in the past with him. There is another layer here, and it's a layer that's going to be gone by the time we get to like Star Wars Rebels. So we'll get to see the rise and fall of that as well. So super intriguing stuff. I'm really glad that we've got this series, and it's going to tide us over until we get to the Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Definitely, it's definitely going to be a fun time over these next 3 months to be a Star Wars fan.
Yep. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you guys for everybody that joined us in the live stream. I'll give some quick shout outs. So Justin Huber, 96, Mudhorn Station, One Up versus CPU, My Star Wars Guys, Music Train joined us. We also had some late folks that dropped in, like Paula, 1966, and Zorellins. Thank you for being here. She says, I managed to join just before the ends. Oof, gonna re-listen to your coverage after. So thanks for chiming in here, and I'm glad you got your shout out. So we'll leave it there. Don't forget to join us this Sunday if you're a Patreon member. We're going to be breaking down the balance of the Force for the first time officially on the show. That'll be a lot of fun. That'll be at 9 p.m. Central on Sunday night, and then we'll come back on Tuesday of next week to give you the breakdown of the first 2 episodes of this series, The Dark Revenge and Sinister Schemes. That'll be Tuesday night, 9 p.m. We hope you guys can join us for that breakdown as well. So on behalf of Chris and myself, thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you guys here on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.